At the New Year's banquet in the hotel, I received her message, and within an hour she was standing before me in tears. Brunch at my sister Kendra's house was always a chaotic kind of warm. Denver in the spring meant everyone wore light jackets they'd end up tossing on chairs, and Kendra's kitchen, open, modern, a little too white, was filled with voices ricocheting off polished counters and glass cabinet doors. There were waffles burning in the second round of the iron, my dad complaining that the coffee tasted like dishwater, and my mom rearranging chairs like we were hosting a wedding. My nephew's birthday brunch had somehow turned into a full-on event. Macy was in the middle of it all, hair perfectly curled, sleeves rolled, laughing like the world was light and nothing weighed her down. She always did this thing at family gatherings where she became the most competent person in the room. It made her hard not to admire, even when I knew half of it was smoke and mirrors. That Sunday morning, she had just set down a bag of groceries on the kitchen island when it happened. She pulled out her wallet. It was the dark green leather one I'd bought her in Santa Fe, the one with the brass zipper that always stuck. She was rifling through it for the grocery receipt when a small rectangle slipped out and floated to the ground like a feather. It hit the tile with a sound no louder than a whisper, but it stopped time for me. A hotel keycard. Navy blue, gold trim. Harbor Grand. Room 812. The printed date. The night before. I was the only one who saw it. She saw that I saw it. Her fingers moved fast. She picked it up like it was nothing, like she'd dropped a receipt or a gum wrapper. She didn't even glance at it. Just slid it back into her wallet like it belonged there, snapped the zipper shut, and smiled so effortlessly it made my stomach clench. That moment, right there, that was the first time I saw her truly lie with her whole body. Not a flinch, not a crack in her voice, just a seamless pivot. "Shoot," she said, not missing a beat. "I completely forgot, Kendra. Where do you want to set the drinks? Should I bring out the second tray of glasses? And do you want the bacon separated from the vegetarian stuff for the kids?" Kendra blinked, half listening, holding a spoon over a pot of oatmeal. "Oh, yeah. Just keep the veggie stuff on the left side of the counter." Macy nodded, already moving. "Perfect. I'll help set up the bar cart. Who's got the mimosa mix? And where's the sparkling water?" Just like that, the focus shifted. My mom launched into a minor rant about how the kids shouldn't be allowed sugar before noon. Kendra turned back to the stove. My cousin Henry, who'd flown in from Texas, cracked a joke about bourbon in the syrup. Everyone laughed. Everyone moved on. Except me. I stood there with the coffee pot still in my hand, watching Macy as she knelt to arrange drink glasses. She was humming softly under her breath. I couldn't hear the tune, but it was the kind of hum she only used when she was completely comfortable or pretending to be. The Harbor Grand. I knew that hotel. It wasn't where we were staying, that would have made sense. No, we had a perfectly decent room booked at the Hyatt across town, walking distance from my sister's. The Harbor Grand was downtown in the financial district. It was the kind of place where executives stayed for conferences, where they brought clients for drinks they didn't pay for. Rooms started at $300 a night, and the elevators smelled like lemon and leather. Room 812. The night before, I told myself I didn't feel anything. Just watched. Just noticed. But something had shifted. Not a full crack. More like a hairline fracture. Barely visible but enough to let light through if you stared at the right angle. "Hey, Ollie." Macy's voice cut through the haze in my head. I looked up. She was holding a plate in one hand, eyes warm, smile too wide. "Can you help me carry these outside? I think we're doing brunch on the deck." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, sure." And that was that. We moved as a team just like we always did. Set the table. Passed napkins. Topped off champagne. No one else noticed anything unusual. Why would they? It was brunch. Balloons tied to chairs. Kids asking for extra syrup. Old family photos clipped to string lights on the fence. Macy sat beside me during the meal. She leaned into my arm when my cousin told an old story. She laughed a little too long at my dad's joke about the burnt offering waffles. She asked my mom about retirement plans and offered to bring dessert to the next get-together. And I watched her. Closely. Not in a jealous way. Not in a paranoid way. More like a researcher taking notes. My wife, the woman I had married 7 years ago under a sky so blue it almost looked fake, had just dropped a hotel key from the previous night out of her wallet, and not one nerve in her body had reacted like it meant anything. She had recovered, redirected, and resumed without blinking. That terrified me more than if she'd frozen. More than if she'd stammered or looked guilty. The ease of it, that was the real giveaway. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not the rest of the brunch. I made jokes. I clinked glasses. I took photos with my niece who insisted I wear a paper crown. I even held Macy's hand when my mom brought up old family stories, and she gave me this look like everything was exactly as it should be. But that card, that room, that night, it had planted itself in the back of my mind like a burr. Small, hard to reach, impossible to ignore. No alarm bells, not yet. Just a steady hum of why. Why was she there? Who with? And more than anything, why didn't she flinch? Later, when we got back to our hotel, the one we were actually staying in, I excused myself to shower. She offered to unpack some things. Said she might go for a short walk afterward. Maybe find coffee. I said, sure, sounds good. And closed the bathroom door. Inside the small tile box, I stood still under the water and let the weight of that card press in. I replayed her expression, her timing, her voice, all of it, over and over. The way she had maneuvered the conversation like it was second nature. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. She didn't panic because she had practice. She didn't break because this wasn't new. And the worst part? I hadn't noticed until now. That night, after the brunch, I couldn't sleep. Macy curled up beside me in the hotel bed, head resting on her arm like it was any other night of our marriage. She sighed once, softly, the way she always did right before slipping into sleep, and her hand rested lightly on my shoulder like a peace offering. But my eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling above us, watching shadows move with every car that passed on the street below. I didn't say anything, not about the card, not yet. Instead, I started cataloging. Quietly, methodically, like a librarian walking back through a long-neglected archive. There was no panic in it. Just that low, crawling suspicion that doesn't scream, but whispers. The kind you hear best when everything else is quiet. I remembered the late-night runs. Macy had started those about 8 months ago, after a random Sunday night conversation about how she didn't feel as strong anymore. At first, it seemed innocent. She'd throw on her workout clothes, lace up her shoes, and head out around 10:30 p.m. She always claimed she liked how peaceful the streets were that late. No one to stare at you sweating, she'd joke. But now that I think back on it, her gym clothes were never actually sweaty. Not once. I'd smell them sometimes, tossed over the edge of the laundry basket, fresh, clean. Sometimes still faintly scented with that new fragrance she'd started wearing. It was subtle and expensive, the kind of scent that came in minimalist packaging and cost more than I'd ever spend on cologne. The shoes were another thing. They always looked pristine, not worn in, not scuffed. For someone who claimed to be running several miles a night, they barely had a mark on them. Then there was the calendar. We used to share everything digitally, Google Calendar, synced devices, color-coded entries. If either of us had a work meeting or dinner or weekend away, it showed up in the feed. We'd even set reminders for each other's dentist appointments. I noticed a change gradually, maybe around the same time as the running started. Events started disappearing. She said the app was too cluttered, that she was going analog with a paper planner. At first, I didn't think twice. Macy had always been a bit old school about certain things. She liked writing in real journals, kept handwritten recipe cards in a wooden box, mailed birthday cards instead of texting. So I didn't question it when she pulled out that little tan notebook and said she was done with the cloud. But the entries in it were vague. Meeting, lunch, follow-up, run. With no details. No names. No times. Sometimes just a line across a page. Once I saw something written on a day, she told me she had no plans. Check-in, 5:15. I asked her what it meant, and she said it was a reminder to check in on a project. Said it quickly, dismissively, and I believed her. I wanted to. Then the phone behavior started changing. It used to ring out loud, buzz during dinner. She used to leave it face up on the table, in the car, on the couch. But somewhere along the way it went permanently silent. Always face down. Always locked. She'd take it with her into the bathroom, into the laundry room, into the closet when she changed. Once, I came into the bedroom and saw her shove it under a pile of folded shirts like it was second nature. I said nothing. Again. But the wine glasses, that was harder to ignore. One night about 3 months ago, she came home late, past midnight, and I was still up, half watching a documentary. She kissed me on the forehead, said she'd stopped by a friend's place after work, and went upstairs to shower. I walked into the kitchen maybe 10 minutes later and noticed 2 wine glasses in the sink. One had her signature berry-colored lipstick smudged on the rim. The other had lipstick too, but it wasn't hers. A coral orange shade, a tone I had never once seen her wear. I stared at them for a full minute, trying to tell myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she tried a new shade? Maybe it stained differently on glass? But no, I knew her colors. She was consistent. That lipstick didn't belong to Macy. Then came the receipt. A yellow cab stub tucked into the side pocket of our car, folded like it had been there a while. I found it during a routine vacuuming, the kind of Saturday cleanup I did when I needed to clear my head. The timestamp read 2:08 a.m. and the drop-off address was not our home. It was a hotel downtown. Not the Harbor Grand, a different one. When I asked her about it, she blinked like she didn't understand. "Oh," she said, tapping the paper. "That must have been from my old girl's night with Tanya. Remember? She got wasted and made me take a cab with her back to the Westin. We hadn't seen Tanya in nearly a year. But again I nodded. Because that's what I did back then, believed first, doubted second. Small things piled up after that. Card charges from bars at hotels we'd never stayed in. Once, I got a random notification on my phone about an AirTag being nearby for an extended period. I dismissed it at the time. I figured it was someone else's tag picked up by mistake. But it happened again. Then a third time. Each alert showed up on nights she said she was busy, usually late. Usually working on something, or staying at the office, or running. The AirTag location? Downtown. Always hovering near the same few blocks. Then there were the rideshare trips. She didn't know I'd set up a monthly summary report for our joint account. Most of the time it showed basic stuff, groceries, coffee shops, the occasional lunch. But every couple of weeks, there'd be a cluster of Uber or Lyft rides, usually late at night, and they all ended in the same zip code, near the financial district, near the Harbor Grand. Alone, each of these things could be explained away. A clean pair of sneakers? Maybe she wiped them down. Missing events from the calendar? Maybe she forgot. Face down phone? Maybe she didn't want notifications distracting her. Wine glasses? A guest? A neighbor? Receipts? An old friend? A work meeting? AirTag? A fluke? Rideshare history? Traffic? Detours? Office drinks? I could rationalize almost anything when it showed up on its own. But together, side by side, time-stamped, connected, they told a story, not just of suspicion but of patterns, of calculated moves, a choreography of deceit, wrapped in the mundane. And the worst part was how long it had taken me to see it. The next morning, while Macy slept, I sat at the tiny hotel desk and opened my laptop. I didn't type anything. I didn't search for a name or a hotel or even the rideshare logs. I just opened a blank note and wrote one sentence. What am I refusing to admit? Then I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I care to say. It happened on New Year's Eve. The night was everything it was supposed to be. Loud, glittery, carefully overhyped. Macy and I had flown to Seattle for a waterfront banquet at the Edgewater, hosted by a friend of mine from grad school who now worked in tech and had more money than he knew what to do with. Fireworks over the bay. Champagne towers. The kind of night you dress up for even if your soul's a little tired. Macy had outdone herself. Hair pulled into one of those elegant buns that looked like it had taken a stylist 3 tries. That same fragrance she wore after her night runs. A dress in deep forest green, velvet, low-backed, Not quite risque but not far off. The kind of dress that makes people pause a half-second before giving a compliment. She had been floating all night, laughing, weaving between conversations, subtly adjusting her posture when she noticed someone important. She had this effortless way of becoming the centerpiece of whatever room she was in. I'd always found it magnetic. I used to feel lucky just to be the guy she stood next to. But that night, I watched her with something else behind my eyes. A widening gap between trust and perception. The filter I couldn't switch off anymore. At some point between speeches and fireworks, while Macy was chatting with a couple from San Francisco about real estate, I stepped outside to take a work call. Not that I really had to, I just needed air. Needed space from all the noise. The wind was cold off the water. My phone buzzed in my jacket. I looked down at the screen. It was a text from Macy's number. But the message wasn't for me. Room 812 was everything last night. I can still smell you. Want to see you again. Same time after the toast? Winky face. I stared at it for a second, waiting for it to disappear. Waiting for it to make sense. I felt the heat rush to my ears, not from anger, but from that cold flush that hits right before the truth slaps you. I wasn't even breathing. My hands were shaking. I opened her message thread. The text had been sent to me, accidentally. Probably meant for whoever held the other half of that memory. Whoever had been with her in room 812. The Harbor Grand. Same hotel. Same room number. Same number that had been printed on the keycard she dropped at brunch in Denver. And now she had tied it to a memory. Not a meeting. Not a mistake. A memory. I didn't go back inside right away. I stayed out there while my fingertips went numb, gripping the phone like it could change what I had just seen. The message wasn't vague. It wasn't deniable. It wasn't something she could laugh off with a sarcastic wrong number. There were too many specifics. Too many connections. Too much already built behind it. Room 812. The Harbor Grand. The previous night. Now it was a repeated location. Now it was a habit. When I finally walked back in, she was exactly where I left her. Laughing too brightly, her hand brushing her necklace, head tilted back in amusement. She looked like a woman who had nothing to hide. But when our eyes met, something cracked. She looked at me. I looked through her. I said nothing. I walked straight past her and poured myself a drink. I didn't drink much, usually maybe a beer with dinner, wine on holidays, but that night I needed something to hold in my hand. Something to burn. Fireworks started just before midnight. The crowd spilled out onto the terrace. Champagne flutes passed from hand to hand, people doing their countdowns early and late. A sea of half-drunk strangers trying to kiss the right person at the right time. Macy found me in the crowd. She slid up beside me like she always had, her hand slipping around my arm. 10 minutes till midnight, she whispered. You gonna kiss me or just glare into the void all night? I didn't answer. She pulled back slightly, her brow furrowing. Ollie. I turned to look at her. That close, I could see the way her makeup was beginning to wear thin at the corners of her eyes. I could smell that sharp, musky perfume again. The same one I used to like. Her smile faded. She studied my face like she was searching for an expression she didn't recognize. Then her phone buzzed in her clutch. She opened it without thinking, and froze. Her eyes widened. Her breath hitched. And right then, I knew she had realized what she'd done. She had sent the text to me. The wrong name in the box. The wrong moment. The wrong lie slipping into the wrong hands. She turned to me with a kind of panic I had never seen in her face before. Not even during the worst fights we'd had. Oliver, she said, voice thin and trembling. Don't, I said, just above a whisper. She reached for me. Please, I can explain. Can you? I asked. My voice wasn't angry, just finished. The countdown started in the background. 10, 9, 8. Her eyes were full of tears now, the kind that came too fast to be faked. 7, 6. She shook her head, lips trembling. I didn't mean 4. 5, 4. I stepped back, just once. 3. The crowd around us kissed and cheered. 2, 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks lit the sky. And Macy stood there, in her velvet dress and running mascara, her world collapsing behind her eyes, while mine was already gone. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout or throw my drink. I didn't tell anyone. I just walked away, quietly, deliberately, leaving her alone on the terrace with the ash from fireworks drifting through the air like snowfall. She followed me inside, of course. I knew she would. She caught up to me near the coat room, breath ragged, eyes wild. "Ollie, please don't walk away. That text was the only honest thing you've said in months," I said, turning around to face her. She froze. She wasn't used to me being calm when I was angry. And I wasn't angry in the loud way. I wasn't yelling or accusing. I was observing, recording, collecting. "You were in that room last night," I said. "And you were in it in Denver. And maybe before that. I'm guessing I don't even know the half of it." Tears streaked down her cheeks. "I swear to God, Ollie, it didn't mean anything." "It was." I held up my hand. "You don't get to do that," I said. "Not tonight. Not anymore." She looked around, desperate. "Can we just talk? Please. I need to explain. I'll tell you everything, I promise." But it was too late. I didn't trust her promises. Not after what I'd seen. Not after that message, typed out with memory and longing, meant for someone else. I turned back toward the hallway. She didn't follow. When I reached our hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened a new folder in my phone. Title: December 31st, Proof. I uploaded a **T of the text. Then I added a new entry to the timeline I had started building. Date, time, location, sentiment. This wasn't about paranoia anymore. This was about truth. And the truth had finally sent itself to me, unprompted, undeniable. The morning after the banquet, Macy was already up before the sun. I heard the soft rustle of bags and the tap of makeup brushes long before I opened my eyes. She moved quietly, carefully, like someone trying to cover tracks in fresh snow. When I finally sat up, she turned with a smile already in place. "Good morning," she said, like nothing had happened, like the words she'd texted me, to someone else, weren't still glowing on my screen, preserved and backed up to the cloud. She had made coffee, folded my coat. She even laid out aspirin and a bottle of water on the nightstand, like some polished hotel turn-down service. I watched her fix the cuff of her sleeve, smooth the hem of her blouse. "Big meetings today," she said lightly, "but I figured I'd grab us pastries before I go. That little place on Pike you liked." "Okay," I said, voice flat. She blinked, smiled again, wider this time, like maybe she hadn't heard the tone. Or maybe she had and chose to pretend she hadn't. Either way, I didn't offer more and she didn't ask. She kissed my forehead like it was any other day in any other month of our marriage, then left the room with her hair still damp and keys in hand. The door shut softly behind her, and I finally exhaled. This was the beginning of a new phase, not of confrontation, not yet, but of quiet observation. She had confirmed everything the moment panic set in on the terrace. Her text wasn't a misunderstanding. Her reaction had said it all. But now she was pivoting. Hard. Over the next few days, Macy leaned into a full-blown performance of domestic devotion. And I let her. It started subtly. Folded laundry, handwritten notes, spontaneous offers to run errands she used to roll her eyes at. She brought home my favorite snacks without asking. Sent me memes during the workday like she used to when we were still trying to impress each other. She started initiating conversations again, full of just thinking about us energy, as if she were building towards something warm and wholesome. At home, she cooked elaborate dinners. Seared scallops, truffle risotto, fresh herbs clipped from the pot on the balcony, wine pairings, scented candles. She even printed out little menus once. "A dumb little joke," she said, laughing like the old Macy, except her eyes flicked toward mine after every punchline. She arranged fresh flowers in every room. Started calling me babe again casually like muscle memory. She took more selfies, always smiling, always angled toward light. Sometimes with me in the frame, sometimes not. Once, She staged a breakfast scene in bed, plate balanced on a tray, strawberries cut into hearts. I was still brushing my teeth when she posted it. Reset, reground, rebuilding, red heart. It was all performance. Meticulously framed, intentionally public, a display of affection engineered for witnesses. And I said nothing. I played my part with quiet precision, ate her dinners, smiled for her phone, kissed her forehead, went to work, came home, went to bed. But beneath the surface, I was documenting everything. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was building a case, not for revenge, not even for confrontation, for clarity, for certainty. While she put on her show, I was assembling a timeline. First, the receipts. I went through every shared card statement from the past 6 months, isolating transactions at restaurants, hotels, bars. I cross-referenced them with her planner entries, the paper one she thought was safe. I took photos of each page when she left it out on the counter, then matched those against Uber and Lyft trip histories pulled from our email inbox. Most of the rides stopped within 4 blocks of downtown boutique hotels. There was a rhythm to her movements, pattern. She used the same 2 hotel bars repeatedly. She stayed under certain thresholds to avoid triggering fraud alerts. She made her biggest purchases in cash. But the gaps were still visible. Once you knew where to look, they were everywhere. I checked the gym log next. She'd used my membership for the first half of the year before switching to a new studio. When I called, they confirmed she hadn't scanned in once. Not a single workout. I ***ed that too. Then I pulled the backup files from her cloud. Not her main account, but the one she'd used once on my laptop back when we were traveling. She never disconnected it. Probably forgot. Inside, I found auto-saved photos, including one from a hotel lobby I didn't recognize. A tiny reflection in a mirror showed a man's shoulder next to hers. She had cropped him out when she posted it online. She hadn't cropped him from the source. I kept going. She had signed up for hotel loyalty points under her name, but listed me as an emergency contact. I found out when one of the monthly statements auto-forwarded to my old work email, the one linked to my Apple ID. It included check-in dates, room preferences, and one repeated number, 812, Harbor Grand, Seattle, Denver, Chicago. Same room requested each time. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, location. Column C, alibi. Column D, actual. Column E, source of proof. Column F, supporting details. Column G, notes. I wasn't obsessive. I was exact. Because if she was going to make this look clean on the surface, I needed the foundation beneath it to be unshakable. No gaps. No doubts. And the thing is, I wasn't even sure what I was preparing for. Divorce? Maybe. Confrontation? Possibly. But more than anything, I needed to see it. All of it. Mapped out and undeniable. Her version of reality was wrapped in ribbon and flowers. Mine was time-stamped. I remember one night, maybe 2 weeks after the New Year's trip, she sat beside me on the couch, head resting lightly on my shoulder. The scent of her shampoo mixed with the vanilla candle she'd lit earlier. She asked if I wanted to book a weekend getaway. Just us, she said, fingers brushing the back of my hand. Her voice was soft. She looked hopeful, and I said sure, because I wanted to know if she'd lie about it again. She picked the destination, Napa. She even said she'd been meaning to go back, then caught herself and added, I mean, we've been meaning to go. I watched her fumble and recover, smile fixed, her eyes darting too fast for someone who was planning romance. After she went to bed, I checked the hotel she'd picked. She had stayed there in October. Room 812. Different city. Same number. I added it to the spreadsheet. I didn't expect the envelope. It showed up 3 days after the Napa conversation, tucked neatly between a utility bill and a catalog neither of us remembered subscribing to. No return address. No postage. Just our last name written across the front in clean block letters. Black ink, steady hand. I opened it at the kitchen counter, half distracted, thinking it was something from my lawyer. But the moment I pulled the contents free, I stopped breathing. Inside, a photograph and a printed invoice. The The photo was grainy, clearly taken from a distance, maybe through a windshield or across a parking lot. But there was no mistaking the car, her car, parked beneath the glowing blue canopy of the Harbor Grand, Denver location. License plate visible. Timestamp printed digitally in the corner. 9:47 p.m. The night before the brunch with my family. I didn't need the timestamp. I already knew the date. I'd memorized it. The second page was an invoice. Hotel letterhead. Room 812. One night. One guest. American Express ending in 1803. Our joint account. Services charged to the room. 2 house cocktails. Room service. Steak and red wine. Valet parking. Check-in. 6:12 p.m. Checkout. 8:41 a.m. I set both pages down gently. Stared at them for a long time. The kitchen suddenly silent. The hum of the refrigerator unnaturally loud. I hadn't collected this evidence. Someone else had. And that made everything worse. Macy walked into the kitchen a minute later, still drying her hands from the bathroom. Her hair pulled up in a casual bun. She kissed me on the cheek without looking down at the papers. I was thinking pasta tonight, she said lightly. Something simple. Sounds good, I replied, sliding the pages face down as calmly as if they'd been coupons. She didn't notice, or pretended not to. I didn't ask. I needed time to think, because this changed things. This meant there was someone else watching. Someone with access. Someone with reason. The envelope didn't come from a stranger. Whoever sent it knew. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were confirming what I already suspected, offering proof in the quietest way possible. I checked the photo again that night in my office. Zoomed in. The angle was from low to the ground, like someone had been crouched behind another car or snapped it from inside their own. Rain blurred part of the image, but Macy's silhouette was unmistakable as she walked toward the entrance, heels in hand. There was something almost gentle about the way it had been delivered. No accusation, no signature, just the truth hand-fed like medicine. Like someone was saying, "You're not crazy. I see it too." It stayed in my desk drawer after that. I didn't scan it, didn't file it. It didn't need to go in the spreadsheet. It had its own weight. A different kind of evidence, external, unsolicited, unbiased. The first sign that I wasn't the only one betrayed. A week later, I found out who sent it. Came in the form of an email. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I think we're dealing with the same problem." The message was short, clear, direct. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just tired of being lied to. My husband is Thomas. I believe he and your wife have been seeing each other for several months. If you'd like to compare timelines, I can show you what I found. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want out. Claire. Thomas. The name did nothing for me at first, but when I searched Macy's email later that night, I found him. Buried in a forwarded e-vite from a corporate function 3 months earlier. Thomas Reynolds, VP of Strategy for some firm she did freelance consulting for. That's how she'd framed it at the time. Just a client gig. One of those vague, professional words that made it sound dull and legitimate. I replied to Claire the next morning. We met 2 days later at a quiet corner table of a cafe in a different zip code. Both of us looking like people who hadn't slept well in months. She was older than I expected, maybe early 40s, and carried herself with the exhausted precision of someone who had already passed through her fury and come out the other side. She had her own folder. Hotel receipts, text logs, calendar screensh *TS. Notes. It was like looking at a mirror of my own investigation. And the overlap was undeniable. Same cities, same weekends, same hotels. Sometimes they didn't even bother booking separate rooms, Claire said, sliding one invoice across to me. I guess it made it easier. The invoice was from the Harbor Grand in Chicago. 1 room, room 812. What made you start digging? I asked. She gave a humorless laugh. An Uber receipt, and a gut feeling that never went away. She didn't ask about my marriage. She didn't ask if I still loved Macy. All she said before we parted was this: "You're not alone." That sentence stayed with me, because until then, I had been moving through it like I was underwater, everything muffled, everything just out of reach. But now I had someone else holding the other end of the story. Someone who could point to the same dates and say, yes, that's when they lied to us. A few days later, another surprise fell into my lap. An email notification from a hotel loyalty program I didn't know we were enrolled in. It landed in my old recovery inbox, the one Macy had listed as her backup contact years ago, when we were first married and still sharing everything like we had nothing to hide. Subject line: thanks for staying with us again. Macy, your 5th visit to Harbor Grand. The body of the email was filled with confetti graphics and an invitation to redeem points for a romantic weekend package. I clicked the activity log. There they were: Denver, Chicago, Seattle, San Diego, always booked for one. Always 2 drinks charged to the room. I forwarded the email to my new inbox and saved it as a PDF. The eSIM profile came last. An accidental discovery while scanning the app on her phone that managed our wireless plan. There, under the Devices tab, was a second virtual SIM registered to her phone. A hidden number. One she'd paid for out of our joint account. Buried beneath subscriptions, next to Spotify and Kindle Unlimited. I texted that number from a burner app later that night. You left something in room 812. No reply. I didn't expect one. I wasn't trying to bait her. I just wanted to watch. And when she checked her phone 15 minutes later, locked the screen, then flipped it face down on the kitchen table, I knew. She saw it. She recognized it. And she didn't flinch. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I closed accounts, opened my own, met with a lawyer, copied every receipt, ride log, booking, and text. I built a timeline so precise it didn't need explanation. While she decorated our home with false hope, I packed the truth into folders. No drama, no yelling, just clarity. A silent exit strategy crafted behind smiles and wine nights. She played house. I documented its collapse. At the next event, Macy glowed like nothing had cracked. I let her. She expected a reset. Instead, the envelope I'd prepared, photos, receipts, logins, bookings, arrived quietly via our lawyer. At home, silence filled the rooms she once staged with affection. I filed for divorce. No theatrics, no accusations, just the truth formally delivered. Her betrayal wasn't rage anymore. It was fact, and facts don't negotiate.